All right, welcome. I know, Mike, thanks for coming on, and we're gonna kind of start this thing and see where it goes, and then just have a conversation and try to help people out and to get our opinions out there a little bit more and see if we can help the world with their mindset and ability to think better.
Yeah, big time. I feel like I don't know if this is the first episode of the Kevin Brewer Show, but I'm excited to be here, man. I think there could be some good things in the works here. Um, so, Kevin, you let me know how you want to set it off. I have some questions for you. I'd love to fire away. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for just to kind of frame it a little bit, I think we're going to talk about accountability and kind of go over what excuses and reasons, how they kind of interplay with each other, the three of them, and the differences between them, and just kind of like kind of as a main topic, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. So, when you say accountability, what does accountability mean to you?
So for me, accountability is be responsible for the actions that you take within any kind of interaction, or for your actions in responses, kind of thing. Ironically, how I kind of thought about this initially was as I'm driving, I keep seeing these stickers on cars that say, patience, student driver or baby on board or all this crap, right? And I started thinking, I was like, that's just people passing on responsibility and accountability, right? It's like, be a better trainer, be a better teacher, take your kid or wherever, whatever it is, and be more responsible. Take them to a parking lot, have them like practice in different scenarios, in what cold weather, wet weather, ice, snow, whatever it is. Take them to a safer environment, and if they're not comfortable in there, they shouldn't be on the road anyway. And I started thinking about that. I shouldn't be more patient with you on the car on the road if your child's driving. You need to be better at teaching them to be able to handle that because once they take that sticker off, right? Like, how would anybody know, right? So it's like for me, that's kind of where I kind of started with this. I know, weirdly enough, same thing with being a baby, right? Like a baby on board. If you don't feel comfortable driving, that's your responsibility then to get better at driving. And you need to be more accountable for learning how to drive. And you're just trying to pass off these excuses to somebody else and say, hey, you be responsible for me, not the other way around. It's like it's garbage. You know what I mean? I know it's a weird
Yeah.
way to kind of get into it, but that's kind of how my brain works
No,
sometimes.
it's not. It's not weird. It's not weird at all. It's an interesting perspective of like, hey, I have my baby on board, so you need to change your behavior. Like, it's like I
Right.
don't have to change the way I'm driving. Like, I might want to run red lights. I might want to drive like an asshole, but you need to change the way that you behave. You need to change the way that you drive. I got a good one for you. Okay, why don't people want to take accountability? Why do people obsess over passing the buck to someone else?
So I would say for me personally, I see it as it's the easiest route to not basically critique yourself, right? So it's like it's easier to believe that somebody else is wrong than it is to look at yourself and say, maybe I have done something wrong, right? Like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
But what is that though? Like, what does it come down to? Like, is that just ego, or what is it?
Yeah, I mean, think that ego. It could be ego. It could just be lack of accountability as growing up, right? So, like, if say, you're raising a child or you're being raised by your parents, and they never make you like accountable for anything you do, it's impossible for you then to look at yourself and say, well, maybe I'm the problem, all right? Because nobody wants to be the problem. Everybody wants something else to be the problem. But generally speaking, if everything's going wrong around you, you're the common denominator, right? So it's like maybe you are the problem, or maybe there's something you're doing that could just be off-putting, right? Like, not saying you have to
Yeah,
change for everybody, but you need to take a look at it. What
and
do you think?
this could spiral off in so many different directions because, like, at the end of the day, most men and most I can't speak for I don't really understand the way women behave a lot of times. I just I just don't. It's a learning process, but I think just most men are looking to take the path of least resistance, and I don't think it's much more complicated than that a lot of times. So if you have two options, right? One path is like, hey, I can blame someone else, and then you have one path of like, I can look in the mirror and I can just admit to myself, hey, the guy that's looking back at me, he's the one that's in charge. He's the one that's screwing it up. He's the one that's making his life horrible. That's just a lot harder. So I
Yeah.
think most men are going to just take the path of least resistance and go with that. And I think that it might be easier in the moment. It leads to a much, much harder life over the days, weeks, years, and months. And it compounds and it aggregates. And next thing you know, you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I hate the person looking back at me. I hate this motherfucker.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying, easy decisions lead to hard lives, hard decisions lead to easy lives, right? Like, it's the same concept right there, what you're talking about. Like, easy, when you take the easy path constantly, the hack path, right? Like, you don't learn the skills you need to overcome difficulty.
Yeah, and I see you as a guy. Like one thing I think me and you might have in common is I feel like you're someone who you go out of your way to choose hardships,
Yeah.
whether it's like with what you do with working out, or even just you're at the airport and you're like, hey, let me just make this suck and do push-ups at the airport, and like talk to me a little bit about how that's had an impact on your life and how you think it could impact others.
Just making the hard decisions or choosing discipline, so to speak.
Just choosing hard, just being like, hey, I'm going to
Hmm.
do this because it's hard. Like, how has that impacted your life, and why should other people adopt that frame of thinking?
I'm going to ask you the same thing when I'm done. Um,
Yeah.
so for me, it comes down to as things fall apart around me, then I can stay calm in the storm, right? So it's like all the other stuff, all the outside noise, because I continuously have chosen things to do that are hard, it's kind of wired me to be able to handle difficult situations and keep calm. I guess my nervous system like under control. I can handle everything in my life blowing up and be like, okay, you wouldn't know, right? So, and I haven't really talked about this too much. Is like, technically, I'm being riffed right now from the government, like so a reduction in force, and there's some, I think we're talking to lawyers and stuff to try to fight that, because it's not being done properly. There's some things going on, but I don't really like act like it, right? Because it's like I don't have control over that process. The only thing I have control over is the response that I have to these things. So I'm doing things like this, trying to put more information out, trying to build my coaching business up instead, so you don't have to rely on these things, and then talking to lawyers and doing all this different stuff to try to like say, hey, this is what I can control because I've been through all these different hardships and done these hard decisions and done these things that build this discipline and structure in my life. This thing doesn't make a difference in me because ultimately I know I'm going to come out on the other side because I've been through all these other difficult things. So that's kind of how I go about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for
What about
sure.
you?
Yeah, so the way I see it is this: life is amazing. It really is. But there's
Yeah.
moments in life where it's just gonna suck. And you're like, hey, there's no getting around this. There's gonna be some hard there's going to be some hard things that happen in your life, right? And when
Yeah.
you microdose on hardships every single day, like when you choose the path of most resistance, I'm talking about down to the granular decisions of like, hey, here's a staircase and here's an elevator. Just the little things. I'm going to choose the staircase. Hey, I'm walking by the cold plunge on my way out of the gym. I can either negotiate my way out of it or I can go in for 5 minutes. I find that over the days, weeks, and months, and compounded over time, when you're constantly choosing hard, when life eventually just kicks you in the face, you're gonna be so much more prepared to like you would say, respond and not react. Like
Yeah.
you're calloused to doing hard things. You're like, oh, whatever. And then let's even link it to like the everyday activities that we have to do. Like I think that marketing my business is tedious. I think that hopping on sales calls at times can be tedious. But when I do things before 9 a.m. that most men would just simply not do, most men would just quit. Most of the things that I do before 9 a.m., it makes those other tasks seem a lot more digestible and a lot easier. That's why I choose
Yeah.
hard every single day.
Yeah. No, I mean that makes complete sense. And it's again, similar thing where it's like, these difficult things that you do willingly helps you in the things that like you're not necessarily having to willingly do, right? It's like almost like a survival thing. It's like, well, it makes it more manageable and tolerable mentally, physically, and spiritually because you've chosen other paths. So you've wired your brain to understand it and not like freak out about it.
Big time, big time. And
Yeah.
like to speak to what you were saying about doing it willingly, like when you make that choice willingly and knowingly,
Yeah.
it's almost like you're advancing your own level of growth. Whereas when you
Yeah.
choose the opposite, I believe that you're getting worse. I believe you're getting soft, and I believe these little tiny micro steps in the wrong direction. I'm telling you, one day you just wake up and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't
Yeah.
even like who I am anymore. I have chosen the easy route time and time again. And it's those small, tiny little concessions that we make thousands of times over where
Yeah.
we just don't live the life we want and we don't get the outcomes we want. It can go both ways, for better or worse.
Yeah.
So I think we have to just be aware and just be consciously making those decisions.
Yeah, and to kind of reiterate what you said there, and it made me think about that when you brought it up, is when I said you're doing it willingly, you're also at the same time training your nervous system to just actually believe these other things are willing, right? So it's like you're training your system to understand that that's not a problem. It's just something else to find a solution to, right? So it's not something to freak out about. It's just something else to solve, right? So it's like a puzzle to you now, rather than being something like when people say manage your stress. It's like not really managing your stress. What you're doing is you're teaching yourself to understand how to properly uh, process stress, right? So it's like because stress is required for growth, right? Like you don't go to the gym and go like, I hope my muscles grow today, right? Like you have to stress them out so they know to grow and develop, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing
Some
with
people
our
do.
mind. I mean, fair point.
Some people are in the gym like running their mouths and it's
Yeah,
their fingers. They look the same. Or I see some people at the gym losing and gaining the same 5 pounds again and again, and
yeah.
that just comes down to like at a point you got to look at yourself. And you're gonna be like, am I engaging in the right behavior? Am I doing the things that I need to do to become the person that I want to become? Kevin, I want to.
Well,
If it's
and
cool
that
with
harpens
you,
back.
what's
I
that?
was gonna say that harpens back to being accountable, right? So like if you're having the same thing going back and forth, right? Like you're obviously not actually taking accountability for the fact that you're doing something incorrect, right? Because if that's the case, then something's not working, and you're not being accountable to yourself to go and say, hey, what can I actually take a look at, like objectively, rather than judgmentally, and move past that to actually advance where I want to go, rather than staying stagnant.
And there could be an excuse in there. There could be an excuse in there where like you're looking in the mirror and you're like, dude, I've looked the same 3 years in a row because I've had the same workout routine 3 years in a row. I've eaten the same foods 3 years in a row. I sabotage every single weekend like I did 3 years in a row. But there could be
Yeah,
some type of excuse that you're making on loop where you're like, oh, well, I deserve to have a break from my clean nutrition. Oh, well, I deserve. That's the problem. Everyone thinks that everyone thinks they deserve shit, and it's like I
yeah,
think it's just another excuse,
yeah. And that's a good segue into like excuses versus reasons. So, and I think a lot of people get this confused, which is why, again, people, in my opinion, don't advance or they can stay stagnant. Is for me, an excuse is you're looking for blame, right? Like you're looking for something to again pass the responsibility, which is why that comes back to accountability and responsibility. Is you're looking to pass the blame onto somebody else. That's for me what an excuse means. Whereas a reason is we objectively look at it without judgment and say, hey, what steps did we take to get here? And how can we use this knowledge to prevent it from happening again, right? So it's not looking to blame or cause problems. It's like, hey, if say, you and I didn't communicate well, right? It's like I can blame you and say, like, well, you didn't tell me this correctly. But I could also say, like, yeah, that may be true, but I also didn't ask very many questions. I didn't ask good enough questions. I also didn't communicate very well, right? Like, there's other things to respond, in there that's like, yeah, maybe you didn't communicate very well, but we didn't communicate very well as ultimately, right? Because I have responsibility and accountability within that too, within this conversation. So for me, that's the difference between excuse and a reason, and just being accountable to your piece in this downfall. Rather, that's just simply I didn't ask good enough questions. I didn't get clarity on whatever it was, all these different things. It's like, okay, now we can use this knowledge to prevent it, or at least maybe minimize it later on.
Yeah, and this is a little off topic, but I really, in my heart of heart, I believe that everything in life just comes down to a standard. Like
Yeah.
we have to live to a standard. Like, and everyone does have standards. We have standards in everything we do. We just don't really acknowledge it a lot of times, or we're not aware of it. Like, if you are absolutely sick of the way that you look, you will change your nutrition and you will change the way that you move your body, and you'll change. If you are disgusted at what you see when you open up your bank account, you will change. But I think that a lot of times people just aren't really aware of what their standard is, and like that's literally your rock bottom, like what you're willing to accept in terms of success, fitness, having a strong mindset. And I think the excuses ultimately, like, we just end up selling our own standards up a river, and it ruins everything. It all comes down to just standards, and then just not making excuses, because that's it. Just everyone's making excuses, and I
Yeah,
catch myself doing it every now and then, and like you have to just cut the crap, you know.
yeah, yeah, and I agree. So, like you're talking about, just let's say for gaining weight and losing weight, right? For instance, let's use that as an example. It's really easy to go like, well, blame big pharma, blame big food, blame whoever, right? It's like that's an excuse. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, you could look into it and realize that maybe you're being lied to, and try different things and realize that maybe all the dissenters aren't wrong. Like maybe the people who are actually having success on these other things, maybe they have something that's accurate as well, right? Because nothing's actually ever truly proven or disproven, right? In science, like they want to believe it is, but it's not. Like that's why they constantly update these things, right? So it's like I can keep using that excuse, and I did for a while, right? Like saying, like, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, I can change my diet. I can stop listening to these quote unquote experts and start following people who actually have success figuring out the problems that I actually have. It's like these metabolic issues and different things. Like maybe I do need to cut carbs. Maybe I do need to do these different things. I have that ability to do that. So rather than blaming big food and all these different things, yeah, of course, that's marketing. What do you expect them to do? They want to make money too. I can choose to not listen to it though. I can choose to take a different path. That's where my responsibility comes in, right? My accountability is like, hey, I need to be accountable for my body, right? Like, so it doesn't really matter what you think is best for the general masses. If it's not working for you, you're responsible and accountable for you. So make a change.
Yeah, man, and that's powerful. And not to take this into like a nutritional direction, but I want to hit on the food a little bit too, because there's what science says that you need to do to get fit, and I feel as though all the evidence is to the contrary of that. You see pictures of people from 50 years ago, from 100 years ago, and like, what is the difference at? You know, there's
Yeah.
foods that we're putting in our bodies now that just didn't even exist 100 years ago. Like,
Right.
and those are the foods that are being pushed by people in the fitness industry, and that's the craziest thing to me, because it's like you have all these people that they're yeah, they look good, but like they're sick fit to me. Like they have like that sick fit vibe about them, where it's like, dude, you look amazing, but like your whole vibe is just off, and like you're clearly running on things that like just weren't even around 100 years ago. So it's like that's
Yeah.
not health to me. That's just not health to me. I don't know. I mean, to each his own, but that's not health to me.
No, and I agree. So like, because the thing is, a lot of that's based around like, carbs for energy. But the thing is, that's why they always have to eat heavy, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. That's not natural, right? So like that, if you're thrown into the wild, like watching these survival shows, what do they always go down to? Right? Like they all go, you know what? Fuck these vegetables, fuck all this stuff. I need to go kill an animal and eat it and get the fat and the protein, right? Like every single time, even the vegans on those shows end up eating a bunch of meat. Why? Because they can't sustain it. It's not, so that's why I should tell you that logically it doesn't make any sense. And again, that comes back to being responsible and accountable, right? To understanding cutting through the bullshit and being able to think appropriately and but for yourself, and not going like, well, just because this expert told me this doesn't mean it's true, because it's just their opinion of the the decade or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
just to kind of throw in there too, science now is contrary to what, say, like, so for instance, if you look back at the gladiator training regimens, they had like, I think it was like four or five different gladiator styles, right? And like the movies and talk about like they fought to the death is actually not correct, correct either. It was a job basically for some of these guys. There were some people who were like slaves and stuff thrown in there to get their asses beat, but like it was a job for some people, right? So they had the fast guys, they had the strong guys, had these big guys, and they knew how to fatten people up intentionally to make them gain fat so that they could get, and the purpose was so they can get cut and not die, so there's more blood for the visuals, right? Like you can look it up, and how they did that was feed them more carbs and grains, right? That's they knew back then that that's how you gained weight if needed to be, right? So they would give them the standard whatever they needed, like the meats and fats, proteins and fats, and then they would give them excess carbs then to make them overweight. Now, again, you can argue and say like, well, if they eat, 15 steaks, they're also going to gain weight. Yeah, but when you're using carbs for fuel, then that tells your body to, hey, we don't need this fat for fuel right now. We're going to store it for later. So your body stops burning the fat as a fuel and starts saving it and storing it. If you're not carb adapted, your body won't store the fat. That's why it's not that carbs exactly cause the fat. It's just that it makes your body use fats differently, right? So like there's a little bit of misnomer, and people try to argue the facts on that, but that's really what's going on. So, but again, they knew this decades ago.
It's almost like if I was to explain it to a third grader, it's almost just it's so easy. You just say, hey, um, listen, Michael, when you put sugar in your body, when you put carbohydrates in your body, it burns and it turns to sugar. Your body's going to use the sugar instead of the fat on your body. So it's going to keep burning the sugar. Plus, your
Yeah,
body's going to keep wanting more sugar. So it's just going to keep burning that sugar. And I think a third grader could get it. And I think a third grader might understand that concept easier
yeah,
than someone who's reading all of these studies and they're like, no, look at this study and look at this study and look at this study. But what they're not seeing is like who's funding these studies?
yeah,
Who's funding these damn studies? If you were to sell food, if I were to sell food, and if I needed to make a bunch of money selling food, what would I want to sell? I would want it to be cheap. I'd want it to be delicious. And I'd want it to be addictive. Do carbohydrates not hit all three of those? They're cheap, right? They're
yeah,
inexpensive. They're delicious. Okay, they literally like dopamine in your. It's a drug, right, in your brain. Sugar's a drug to me, and it's addictive because your body runs through it, and then your body's like, well, I need more of it because I'm used to
yeah,
running on this. So it's common sense that it's a great business model. Common sense that that's the money that they're using to fund studies. And I just feel like people are not using common sense. They're just not using their heads
yeah,
because it's just too obvious, you know?
yeah. Just to bring it back to the general topic is, and why we talk about this is it's being accountable to actually learning how to think properly, right? Like stop using the excuses like, oh, this is what some expert told me. Well, you can look at these studies, you can listen to what they're saying and say, like, does this match up to reality? Like if I didn't know this from a study, would it make sense to me if I was thrown into a jungle? That's how we look at everything, right? It's like if I was just thrown in the middle of nowhere, would I be able to use this knowledge to actually survive? And the answer is typically no, right? Like I wouldn't know in the middle of the jungle like the 50 plants I can eat to stay alive, but I do know pretty much every animal I come across I can eat and be okay, right? So it's again learning how to actually stop using excuses and say like, well, this expert told me this. Just because they have a title doesn't mean that they actually know and they have your best interest at heart, or it's necessarily best for everybody, right? So it's being able to use reasoning and logic and being accountable for yourself and your own actions and say like, these people aren't necessarily, my dictator, right? Like I can take the knowledge that they're giving me, I can run it through my own logic and filters, and then take accountability for myself and say, am I going to enact it? And if I do, did it get the results I wanted? And if not, I need to maybe take a look and go, maybe that's not the best information for me.
Yeah. I believe in that firmly. And again, it just comes down to looking in the mirror and just saying, hey, am I engaging in the right behavior that's going to get me the outcome I want? Or am I making an excuse? Is there
Yeah.
some type of excuse in my inner dialogue that I'm not even aware of? Is there an excuse that I'm making to myself? And then I'm selling that excuse to my wife. I'm selling that excuse to my team members. I'm selling that excuse to everyone that's counting on me. That's what it comes down to, is like
Yeah.
the excuse we tell ourselves, that's the excuse we're shoving down everyone else's throat. And we're like, no, no, you got to believe this bullshit too. Like, you have to accept this excuse too because I accepted it. And it's like, that's just not
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
That's not leadership.
And it's a small shift to get out of that. To realize, like, okay, what am I blaming? And then instead of saying, well, that thing is the reason, it's like, well, okay, well, how did I allow that to become a problem? Right. So they can just start, that's how you start taking that accountability. It's like, how did I allow that? Well, okay, I listened to it, but I didn't quite understand it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And then you can start implementing these changes to start taking the excuses and understanding the reasoning behind them. And then you can build accountability into yourself and then start making shifts and changes to deviate your behaviors to something that's more, beneficial for you.
A question for you. Why is it that some people have an awareness to these things, and then there's other people that no matter how many times you show them, hey, this is actually what's going on in your own mind right now. This is actually what you're doing right now, and this is probably the reason why. Like, why? Make it easy. Why are some people aware and some people not aware?
I think it comes down to the concept of, when the students is ready, the teacher will appear. It's people aren't, if they're not willing to accept the fact that they may be the problem or something in their belief system or habitual patterns is the problem or part of the problem, they will never accept that responsibility, right? So like they have to be willing to say, you know what, I want to make a change, and I'm willing to accept that there might be something outside or inside, I should say, that could be the causal problem. Does that make
Absolutely, man.
sense?
Amen. Amen. Well, yeah, man. We got a couple more minutes here. What direction do you want to take this in before we
I mean, I think that's all. I think we covered the topic pretty good, but just to kind of finish off real quick, like what do you think that is the reason why people are on either side of that, right?
I don't know. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it 100%. I don't know because it's not intelligence, and I don't even think it's emotional intelligence. I don't know what it is, but I think that some people maybe it's a matter of having a little humility because I feel as though
Mm,
if people have the humility to go internal and be like, hey, maybe it's me, maybe it's maybe it's the way that I'm thinking. Because if you don't have that humility and you have more of like a victim mindset and you feel like, hey, like things are happening to me and like the world is happening to me, as opposed
yeah.
to like, no, this is my behavior, this is the reason why my life is the way it is. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just a victim mindset. I'm not really sure. I don't know. That's why I asked you. I really don't know. I just find that some people they're a bit more connected to what's actually going on, and some people just feel very disconnected. You know?
I think actually, just to sum that up real quick too, it's like, really the victim mindset by somebody who's a victor is responsibility and accountability, right? It's like, no, just because somebody did something bad to you doesn't mean you can't take accountability for your response to it. Like, right? Do you let it completely destroy your life? Do you learn from it and say, okay, now I know, if nothing else, I know what I don't want to be, right? Like, there's some accountability you can take there and say, hey, you know what? I didn't control their actions, but I can control my response and say, I don't want to be that person, so I'm going to use this for good and understand where I want to go with it, right? And I think to me, that's the difference between being a victim or a victor. It's like, it doesn't matter, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like, we can learn from it and we can overcome it and we can use it for future growth if you're
Yeah, I
accountable.
mean,
Right?
and bottom line, do we want to live a life of truth, or do we want to tell lies? Telling lies to ourselves, telling lies to everyone around us, and just bullshitting.
Yeah.
That's just what it comes down to, right? And making excuses. You're making excuses like, oh, the real reason why I don't have the outcomes I want is this thing that's outside of me.
Yeah.
not me. It's this other thing that I had no. And look. Sometimes there's some merit to this stuff,
Right.
but I believe that anytime something happens to me in my life, my first response is, what type of energy was I putting off to attract this in my life? Like, what type of energy was I showing up with to get that result, to get that outcome? Even the person that comes into your life, oh, I was in a bad relationship. Oh, I had a bad client. Oh, I had a bad prospect. What did I say on social media to bring that to me? What did I do in my life to bring that energy into me? Because I don't believe in coincidence. I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just I know people are going to take that and say like, "Oh, you're blaming the victim." It's like, no. I mean, you just taking responsibility and say, "Okay, how could I conduct myself differently to repel that type of thing in the future, or use this for some kind of future growth opportunity, and move away from people who are potentially going to be like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, if you have some like major physical problem, like say you get in a car wreck, right? Like, yeah, maybe you're not going to be an Iron Man. I get that, right? Like that's again, but you can still use that for motivation for something else, like maybe a speaking gig or something. I mean, like all these different things. So you can use that still for something better. That's what we're saying. Like not saying that like, you know,
The type of people, and I'll end on this one, the type of people that I want to surround myself with and the type of man that I want to be able to take anything negative and I want to take that energy and literally just flip it into something positive. Even
yeah,
if it hurts, even if it sucks, even if it's hard, because energy is just energy.
yeah,
And it is what we make of it. It
yep,
just is what we make of it. So,
yeah,
Kevin, dude, it was awesome. Let's do this again soon.
yep,
And
yeah, man,
yeah, man, let's keep it rolling, dude.
yeah, man. Sounds good. Thanks for having this conversation. Like I said, we'll do it again and keep trying to put some more information on the world.
100%, man. 100%.
All right.
Cool, man.